Lock on to Sports Talk Live. I'm Nathan Osler.
And I'm Danny Erb. Be sure to tune in from 4:30 to 5 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday for the latest news in the wide world of sports.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of Sports Talk Live. It's Friday, May 5th here, and it is 4:30 p.m., and, it's a beautiful day here in Indiana, and it just happens to be the last day of our spring semester here. And my name's Matt Palombo. I'm going to be filling in for Nathan and Danny today. Everyone's spread out across the state of Pennsylvania at this point. I think both Nathan and Danny may have gone home, but great lads. I'm glad to fill in for them, but we're going to hop into some absolutely juicy sports topics today. We got tons of stuff going on this time of year. NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. The Pittsburgh Pirates are absolutely on a tear. Well, not as of the past week, but we'll get into that. And the Steelers, well, not just the Steelers, but the NFL draft was this past week. I thought the Steelers had a pretty solid draft, a top-tier draft in the NFL, I thought. I'm biased because I am a fan of said Pittsburgh Steelers, but I am a fan of that. But we'll touch on that. Actually, let's touch on that now. So, I didn't get an opportunity. Well, I did watch the draft, like the first few picks, but I understand why it has to be like that, but it's just such a long, drawn-out process, and it just feels like it takes forever. Feels like 30 minutes in between each pick. So, I didn't really have my full undivided attention on the draft, but I did end up tuning in around when I thought the Steelers pick would be, and I didn't really, check my notifications on my phone or anything. I'm not quite sure what I was doing. And then I saw that 17 had been Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback from Oregon. And I was quite excited because I liked him as a prospect. I'm not a huge NFL draft prospect guy anymore. I don't really analyze the draft class or anything like that. It's a lot of work. But I had heard good things, but we always have like a mediocre pick, like, the mid to late 20s, because, you make the playoffs, but you come up short every year. It's like you're really in that sort of purgatory where you're not going to be able to rebuild through the draft. Like, you're not going to be able to get players who are ready to play right away in the draft. And finally this year, they had a little bit of a down season, didn't make the playoffs, and that gave them a few more draft spots. And then obviously that Chase Claypool trade gave them the 32nd overall pick. But, yeah, and also, this might be just me being ignorant. I didn't realize that Miami had their, first-round pick forfeited, and that's why the Steelers' pick was the 32nd overall. And I had been hearing that all over, and I wasn't going to question it to anybody, but turns out it's always the 33rd pick is what I thought. But I was right, whatever, it's fine. But, so with the 32nd pick, the Steelers took Joey Porter Jr., and to be able to get a lineman that can, shore up the left side of our – I believe Broderick Jones is a left tackle. But, yeah, so just getting a solid left tackle prospect in there, somebody that can really work with, with keeping Kenny on his feet, let's get Kenny some protection. And then you go out and get one of the top corner prospects in the draft, probably number 2 behind Christian Gonzalez. And I think – everyone thought that Porter probably should have and was going to be a first-round prospect. So getting him at 32 and staying put there, I think they probably had a lot of trade offers for that pick, especially with Will Levis still being on the board and, teams that necessarily didn't want to spend a first-round pick on a quarterback but wouldn't mind doing it in the second. Wanted to pick up Levis with that spot. But I think they made the right choice and sticking there, drafting Porter. I think it's a combination of – I'll be the first one to admit it. Pittsburgh loves someone to root for that, has ties to Pittsburgh. Obviously, Joey Porter Sr. is, a Steelers great linebacker, all-time great, Super Bowl champion. So, well, not all-time great, but he was an outstanding player for a few years in Pittsburgh. So, and he's a recognizable name. So, obviously, Pittsburgh's going to be more inclined to want a guy like that. Same with the Kenny Pickett situation last year. It's sure, we had a pick between Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett, but I had a feeling that obviously they probably believed in Kenny as a prospect more, but it was more of like a hometown thing. It was like, look, if we know this guy has fans in this city. We know that, he's going to generate sales. Why don't we pick up this guy? So I think it's a little combination of both. And maybe both Kenny and Joey Porter Jr. just fell into the Steelers' laps whenever they, wanted to take those positions. And, it seems maybe it did. But, I forget all the guys that they drafted after that. The tight end from Georgia, that's about 6'12". That man is a freak athlete. I'm excited to see what he can do. I heard there are some injury concerns with him, but it's football. You're going to have injury concerns with a lot of players, especially when, you're built 6'7", 280. It's a lot of weight to be thrown around out there. But yeah, I'm super excited to see how they all fit in with the Steelers group, and I like the direction that the team's going. And they're getting younger, and they're getting solid players at staple positions where you need some stability. So we're going to hop into a little bit of Pittsburgh Pirates talk now. And, oh boy, the optimism was ever flowing about a week ago. And it seems like, I'm not quite writing them off yet, don't worry. But it's just that Rays series, after the Dodgers series, I was all in. They were, I think, they were the second best team in the league other than the Rays at that point. They were on fire. There was something in 7, 16-7 or something like that. Or maybe it was, I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about that. But they were on an absolute tear. The pitching was unbelievable. Everyone just hitting the ball out of the park. It was just firing on all cylinders. And I'm well, the Pirates could be back here, I don't want to be the one to say it, but we could be back. And then the Rays humbled us a bit. But they have been doing that to every single team. It's not like that was an isolated incident. So the Rays series doesn't worry me as much as a sweep against, say, the Brewers or the Cardinals would. I think once the Pirates get into their heavy division schedule, even though the division is also all in a slump right now, that's when the Pirates, every team in the majors, that's when your team is really put to the test. Whenever you start playing your division rivals a lot, and you start seeing teams over and over and over again, and they figure out your pitches, and they figured out how to pitch to your best guys, then stuff starts to get interesting. But I'm not giving up on the Pirates just yet. Obviously, there are still, I think, 8 games over 500, maybe 7 games after that series. I think they're 20-12 or something, give or take. But they play Toronto tonight, which is another tough series, but it's at home. So they're going to have to bounce back and try to grab a game from them tonight. And I think, that even though it's super early in the season, I think that with how young this team and how sort of ragtag this group is still, it's it could be interesting to see how this could be a turning point in the season. This has happened several times in the past few, probably decade, where they start out hot or they start out cold. And it's just, they're never a consistent team. And I'd like to see some consistency, and hopefully it's not the bad kind of consistency. So at least people are talking about having a semblance of optimism for the Pirates. I'm not going to lie, before this season, I didn't foresee that. I didn't think that there would be any really prospects. I thought McCutchen was kind of just a pity signing. I love McCutchen. That's not what I'm saying. He may be out of his prime, but I thought it was sort of just similar to what I was saying earlier with the Kenny Pickett and Joey Porter Jr. It's Pittsburgh loves a guy to root for. It's confirmed that all Pittsburgh Pirates fans love Andrew McCutchen. How could you not? So bringing him back only makes logical sense. Bob Nutting's well, that's money in my pocket. So absolutely, we're going to sign Andrew McCutchen. And he's been tearing the cover off the ball. For his age and his form in the past few seasons, he's been playing really well. So it's absolutely wonderful to see that. But I think that'll be enough of Pirates talk for now. But yeah, like I said, there's at least some optimism, something to look forward to here with in terms of the Pittsburgh Pirates. So we're now going to hop into some NBA playoff action. So tonight is a huge game for the Phoenix Suns, and that is against the Denver Nuggets tonight at 10 p.m. Nice little West Coast series. So the Suns are currently down 2-0 in that series, and I don't know. Even with a KD, Booker, Chris Paul, like the whole core, like I think this is their last shot at I mean, this is the first time KD has been there, obviously, but this is their last shot at getting a ring or getting to the finals again. Like you just can't keep that whole core together. Chris Paul, I don't know how much longer he's going to play, but you can't expect him to perform at the top of his game for much longer. You know, he's played well. I know hasn't really had as much success in the playoffs as other, elite guards. You know, the Dwayne Wades, wow, I'm blanking on who else I was trying to think of, but he has had that lack of success in the playoffs, and it's known that he went to his first finals with the Phoenix Suns against Milwaukee a few years ago, and they got knocked out in the finals. So it'll be interesting to see tonight if this is the turning point of that franchise. I think it could be if they win. Still a long road to go, but if they lose, go down 3-0, then I think some changes are coming Phoenix's way. I don't think DeAndre Ayton comes back, and I don't know what KD's contract situation is, but who knows if he wants to re-sign with them. I don't know. I just think this is an absolute must-win game for them. That's not an unpopular opinion. I'm just saying this could be a whole storm if they lose this series, especially if they get swept or even lose 4-1 or anything like that. So huge game for the Phoenix Suns tonight. And it's not going to be easy because Jokic is averaging 27.7 points per game, 14 rebounds, and 8 assists in the playoffs so far. So, absolute beast. He's taken that Joel Embiid winning MVP personally, it seems. And speaking of Joel Embiid, he will be back in action tonight along with the rest of the 76ers against the Celtics. And that game is going to be in Philly tonight at 8 o'clock. And it'll be interesting to see how Philly bounces back because they got gobsmacked in Boston. I mean, I'll be honest, I root for the Sixers because, no other team in Pennsylvania, so, I'll take them under my wing. That's fine. I'll be on bandwagon. But I don't exactly root hard for them. But if, they're on and, I'll watch it and I'll tune in and I'll clap my hands. But they got smoked. I expected that to happen in the first game, especially since Embiid wasn't playing, and then Embiid played in game 2 and they got smacked. So, I don't know. If they get that same Game 1 performance from James Harden here in Game 3 and mixed with a pretty healthy Embiid, tough team to beat, man. People forget how good James Harden is, myself included. That 45-point performance in Game 1 and the game-winning shot, vintage James right there. I mean, he's been doing the same step-back move for near 5 years, or probably 10 years now. No one can stop it. That's the sign of a man in his bag. And I'd love to see the bag, get emptied again tonight. So we'll see how that game goes. I think that's also, Philly picks up that game. They got a good chance to take that series because, Game 4 must win for the Celtics in Philly. That's tough, but we'll see. And then last night, the Warriors even the series with a convincing win over the Lakers, 127-100. Klay Thompson absolutely on fire. He had 30 points. Steph Curry was more of a vintage point guard role. He only had 20 points, shot really efficiently, had 12 assists, was running the offense with smooth efficiency. It was great to see. It was really good. I honestly really like Steph Curry just because of the way he plays. It's just like poetry. That man plays hard every time, and you'd love to see it. And the last series of this year's playoffs in the Eastern Conference is the New York Knicks versus the Miami Heat. That series is 1-1. Heat, they knocked off the Bucks in the first round. They've been impressive, but they got to have a healthy Jimmy Butler, and they have to compete in this series and further. They might. I don't have 100% confidence in the Knicks. I'm not saying I love the Knicks that much, but Jimmy's got to be healthy, man. That's their whole team, and he's a playoff performer. I love Jimmy. He's awesome. His backstory is incredible. I've heard it a bunch, but it's something that that they're just not a team without him. But that's basically it for the NBA playoffs. And here in a couple minutes, we're going to have a special guest caller that, if you remember my last time on the show, he was also our special guest then. And his name is Tyler Findish. He's our resident hockey expert. We're going to get him on the line just in a minute here. All right, we are now joined by the man himself, Tyler Findish, our resident Sports Talk Live hockey expert. And, buddy, we got no time to waste. There is an enormous amount of hockey action going on. These playoffs have been electric so far. You know, I won't lie, this is one of the first playoffs that I've really been tuned into from the beginning. Even though the Penguins didn't make it, I feel like I've still been into it more this year. So we're just going to get your thoughts real quick on how the first round ended up. I mean, that was just one of the more unpredictable things I've seen happen. So just give us your quick thoughts on the first round.
You're absolutely right. Electricity is at an all-time high. You look at it, we got the big two dogs, the defending Stanley Cup champions, and the 133-point record-setting Boston Bruins going down in the first round. I don't think anybody could have called that. Seattle catching the dub, expansion franchise looking dangerous again. That's a scary sight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, who would have thought Boston? I mean, I kind of had the same thought, more like Tampa a couple years ago. They did the same thing. They won the President's Cup. It's hard to, it's almost like the Warriors that year were that you try so hard in the regular season, and you're chasing that record, and you chase it for so long, and then you finally get there, and that almost feels like an award in itself. And then, the hockey playoffs, I think, to win a Stanley Cup, I think it's one of the hardest trophies in sports to win, if not the hardest. And, it's got to require a completely different mindset. And I think they just weren't ready for the Panthers. The Panthers were electric. I mean, Tkachuk led them in the trenches and on the score sheets, he was putting in great shifts, and they kind of just bullied them in some games, and the thing with Boston is what they were good at all season was once they got the lead, they're going to pour it on, they're going to hold that lead, and they could not do that. There were multiple games where it was 3-1, 4-1, or multiple comebacks for the Panthers and overtime wins. So, I mean, I'm not a Bruins fan myself. I'm not exactly upset about it, more surprised, I would say. But, wow, yeah, just pure electricity from the first round. And I didn't really watch much of the Kraken and Avalanche series. I don't know if you did, but the Kraken have impressed me, man. To beat Colorado, obviously you got to have something going for you, but they're looking dangerous too.
Seattle being able to roll four lines the way they do is unreal. When you look at that team, they're the team that doesn't have the true superstar left going here still, but they're just so deep, top to bottom, complete players. When that's a hard thing for a lot of teams to match up with when you're winning the battles in the trenches too. Yeah, and then back to Boston real quick. You're 100% right. Running out of gas at the wrong time. Have to think if they would have had Patrice Bergeron for the first couple games, he was out injured.
Yeah.
That might be the series right there in and of itself.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, losing a guy a leadership guy like Patrice, I mean, that's huge. I mean, I know they still have guys like Marchand and Pasternak and stuff, but losing a guy like that is huge. And yeah, it just seems like teams that go, I mean, not that you shouldn't go all out in the regular season, but there comes a point where you want to be playing your best hockey when you're going into the playoffs. So they were always chasing that record and never had an opportunity to slow down, I feel like. So that's what maybe the regular season isn't now teams aren't going to want to break that record, dude. No one's going to ever try that again.
Voodoo.
But yeah, now it's a curse. First round loss curse. But I guess we'll just hop into our second round matchups here, starting with Carolina versus New Jersey. Me and you have talked a lot about Carolina this year. I kind of thought that they were not necessarily a dark horse, but they weren't exactly a favorite, but they've kind of worked themselves into a favorite position now because of the, exit of Boston and Colorado. So what do you think about that series?
I think the thing there is Carolina is lacking so much star power, but, their defense is just unreal. And the Devils' defense look good. John Marino's, contributing offensively, having an awesome series. The Dougie Hamilton had a big goal against the Rangers. But I think the Devils were able to overcome the Rangers and make the comeback in the end by using their speed game. But the speed game has been Carolina's mustard, their bread and butter for years.
Right.
And when you look at the coach, Rod Brendamore, man, I think he's just going to make a bunch of good adjustments for Carolina. And the Devils are still inexperienced.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we all thought that was going to bite them against the Rangers, and they ended up overcoming it, like I said, by playing a nice speed game. But I don't think they'll be able to just outskate Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, like, I mean, you're totally right with, like, the whole inexperience thing. Like, I mean, even though it seems like guys like, he's like fourth or maybe even fifth year in the league, or since he got drafted?
Yeah, give or take, I want to say 2019.
Yeah, but all those guys, Hischier, Hughes, like, they're still only, like, early 20s.
Hischier was the first one, and he was drafted in, like, 2017.
Right,
so.
Yeah, so they're probably all, like, maybe, like, 25, 26 max. So, like, they're still young. This is probably only their maybe first trip to the playoffs or second in their careers. So,
First one, I think, for these guys, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think getting that 7-game series under their belt, helps a lot. But it's like, Carolina's not going to feel bad for anybody. And especially, as you said, they're playing somebody who plays a similar style to them. Their coach isn't going to be fooled by anything. So, and they're not going to be able to play just the speed game. And they're not exactly the most physical team, So I think Carolina will wear them down. I think New Jersey will take a couple games from them, but I think I'm pretty comfortable with Carolina winning that series. You think so too?
Yeah, it'll be 5 or 6. I
Yeah.
mean, did the Devils win the game already?
No, they got smoked in the first game. They're
1-0,
playing
right?
They're playing tonight. Yeah, they got
Yeah.
beat like 4-5-1 in the first game, I believe.
It'll be 5, probably 6 games
Yeah,
for sure.
I
But
think they'll
yeah,
take a game or two at
Carolina.
home, but we'll see. All right, so hopping into a Western Conference series also being played tonight, and that is Edmonton versus the Vegas Golden Knights. Last game, 4 goals from Leon Draisaitl, not enough to take the victory. I don't know if McDavid really. I mean, he probably had a couple assists or something. There's no game he has without a point, but I don't know if he must not have scored. But like, when you get 4 goals with somebody or with one player, you got to win the game, dude. That same thing happened to the Stars the other day. It was Pavelski scored 4, and they lost.
Yeah, I think they won that game though. I do.
The
yeah,
Stars?
They lost the first one to Seattle, but that was
okay,
I think, and they won or something.
No,
like that.
I'm pretty
I think
sure
that was
they
overtime,
lost
though.
that game in overtime. They lost 5-4. Because that game was actually insane. I watched most of that
you're
game.
Right.
But yeah, I haven't watched. I'll admit I haven't watched a single minute of the Oilers this postseason. But I know how dangerous they are. One of the best top lines and power plays in the league. But you can't just survive off the power play in the playoffs. Like, how do you think that they break down the Knights? Or is it their defense that's the issue? Like, what's the problem?
I mean, right now, there's rumors McDavid's not 100% right now, which if that's the case, that's super tough for Edmonton because while they've improved their depth and their defense, Ekholm was a huge addition for them at the trade deadline. But McDavid's got to be 100% for, I think, that team to win the Cup. And coming into the second round, they were, I think, the odds-on favorite in Vegas, like plus 380 after the Bruins went out in Colorado or something like that. But, yeah, they can't. They're not going to be able to go to the power play a lot. Vegas is, while a physical team, pretty disciplined, I would say. I don't think the series is getting enough toss, though, really.
No.
We got McDavid versus Eichel right here, still the best 1-2 combo in any draft until probably this year. Like,
Right.
So
No, yeah.
I think that it'll go 7 games no matter what. But if McDavid's not himself,
It's gonna be tough.
yeah.
That Vegas team is sneaky, man. They're especially since that addition of Eichel. It's like that's like you said, like it's underrated. It's like I don't hear much about. Maybe it's just because it's a West Coast team. We just don't see many of their games. But like that series has gone under the radar, and I'll have to just pay more attention to it, I guess. But
Vegas is deep, man. That's a deep team with
Right.
a lot of guys who have a lot of experience making runs, and while they do have a lot of turnover year to year, more than most teams for whatever reason. They got Pietrangelo. He just captained the Bruins to a cup. How many? 4 years ago.
right.
Vegas is a good team. That's probably the best series going on right now, honestly.
Yeah, and like I mentioned this about Seattle, this wasn't on. This was just like talking with one of my friends, but it's almost like I feel like the expansion teams like almost sort of adopt the mindset of like chip on their shoulder. It's like, well, my team didn't want me, like they traded me here or they gave me up in the draft. It's like, all right, I'm going to prove to you why you should have kept me or something, and they all kind of form that bond together. They all adapt that mindset. I don't know if that's true. I'm kind of just making that up, but I feel like
you've definitely seen it with Vegas the first time. This is
absolutely.
Seattle year too, but
yeah, this is Seattle's second year,
but
really. Yeah, no, that first year I feel like that's definitely what motivated them. But droning on a little bit too much about that one. So we'll hop into Toronto and Florida real quick with a couple minutes left in the show. I have two things written down in my notes here, and they're both, I think, the huge talking points of this series. Number one, are the Leafs cooked? And number two, are the Panthers Cup dark horses? So I want to hear your thoughts on both of those questions. Are the Leafs cooked in this series in the playoffs? And are the Panthers have a real chance to win the Cup?
So I think the Leafs are cooked, yes. I think it'll still go like 6 or 7 games, but man, winning like 3-4 in a row in the playoffs is tough. And the reason because of that too is your second question. Yes, when you look at Florida, they have everything that you look for initially when you're looking for a cup-winning team. Number one center, Alexander Barkov. Game-changing player, Matt Tkachuk. He's an absolute unicorn right now. We haven't seen a power forward who can score 115 or 110 points or whatever in a regular season and push the same pace in the playoffs, and I don't even know who. And then they have the number one defenseman on their team, Aaron Ekblad. I mean, he's had a pretty good series. Brandon Montour is playing out of his mind. He has, I think, 2 goals in this Leafs series so far, had a goal in Game 7 in the first round, 6 or 7, I think. And then Sergei Bobrovsky, who, as Penguins fans, we've seen a lot of growing up on the Flyers in Columbus, has been a number one goalie his whole career, a really solid guy, but always chokes. And this year, he's holding steady so far. So
right, so far so good, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that was the biggest question with Florida coming in was like their goaltending. I mean, they had 2 guys who were like sort of on the line, on the precipice. But yeah, Bobrovsky clutching up, and yeah, like I mean, I kind of love seeing the Leafs choke too. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I don't mind Florida being the dark horse this year. I kind of can root for him. I'm not the biggest fan of Tkachuk. I respect him, but all right. Real quick, we got about a minute left. Hop into Seattle versus Dallas. Kraken, interesting team to watch. We touched on them a little bit earlier. Great 5-on-5 team, not the best on the power play, but yeah, they got 4 lines that they can churn out and just grind out a hockey game. So, who do you think will grab that series?
Stars in 7.
Yeah, the Stars are tough.
Like Cup 6 coming into it, so I'm gonna stick with them.
Yeah, no, they're tough. They just, I think that series is 1-1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 1-1.
Yeah. So next game's huge, but I believe we are indeed out of time here, sir, but absolutely electric segment, just like these playoffs have been. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I mean, it'll be the last time, since I'm graduating, but glad to have you on, kid. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yep.
Sports Talk Live. We'll see you later.
Anytime. Yep. See ya. Once again, that was our resident hockey expert, Tyler Findish, one of my good friends. The man knows his stuff, and always happy to chop it up with him. But as I mentioned, we are indeed out of time. It is 5 p.m. here on the airwaves. So, it was an absolute pleasure to cover Sports Talk Live for you a few times this semester and last. Always great to talk sports. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Democracy Now! Is up next. You're listening to 90.1 WIUP FM.